Steelers rookie minicamp kicked off today in Pittsburgh. Today I'm going to let you guys know every single player that is attending rookie minicamp this year and a couple of names that you guys should be keeping your eye on throughout the weekend. Then I'll be discussing a new report from ESPN that says Pittsburgh is expecting a pretty big jump from now second-year wide receiver Roman Wilson in 2025. Also, Deshaun Elliott roasted one of the top wide receiver targets in the trade market for the Pittsburgh Steelers after the George Pickens trade. And then Mike Florio shares a new Rodgers theory as to why Rodgers has not signed on with the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point in the offseason. Before we get into the content today, subscribe to the channel because rookie minicamp is going to be going on throughout the weekend. If we get any big updates, we will get you guys videos, probably at my house here in Dallas, Texas. But then on Monday, we're going to have you guys covered with winners and losers from the weekend. Every single player that did a good job, and then maybe some of the players that underwhelmed as well. So if you guys want that extensive coverage all throughout the offseason program here, click that subscribe button because we're going to be providing that coverage 100% free. Okay, so let's start with the roster here at rookie minicamp this year. Now, the people that are the veteran attendees, the veterans that were already on the roster, so they're signed on to futures contracts and they're attending the rookie minicamp. Doug Nestor, the offensive tackle, Jacob Slade, the defensive tackle, Stephen Jones, the guard, Cameron McCutcheon, the corner, and then Dominique Davis, the defensive tackle. Then you can move over to the guys that you really need to keep your eye on here during rookie minicamp, and those are of course the top draft picks for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Derrick Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon, Kaleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa, Jack Sawyer, the edge rusher out of Ohio State, Yahya Black, the defensive tackle out of Iowa, Will Howard, the quarterback out of Ohio State, Carson Bruener, the interior linebacker from Washington, and Donte Kent, the corner from Central Michigan. But keep in mind here, guys, no wide receivers taken by the Pittsburgh Steelers in this year's draft class. And, after not taking a wide receiver in the draft this year, and now that we know George Pickens was always kind of in the discussion to be traded this offseason, not taking a wide receiver certainly affects the grade, for me at least, for the Pittsburgh Steelers draft class this year, because there was a number of good wide receivers that were on the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the time that they were picking in round 4. So, like Derrick Harmon round 1, Kaleb Johnson in round 3, I understand taking those guys instead of a wide receiver. But you could have had Jalen Royals, Elic Ayomanor, Jordan Watkins, one of my favorite receivers in this class, Tory Horton. All right, those guys in particular, I probably would have taken instead of Jack Sawyer, who's going to end up being a fourth edge rusher, kind of like a depth piece and a backup. You could have had somebody be a contributor for you on day 1 if you would have taken one of those wide receivers in round 4 instead of Jack Sawyer. Not saying I'm unhappy that Sawyer's here. He seems like he's a great football character guy, and I'm happy he's a Steeler, but knowing that you were probably going to trade George Pickens, I do think that getting a wide receiver probably would have been the better move. So my previous draft grade that I had on our draft grades video that came out a couple weeks ago after the NFL draft was an A-. But after the George Pickens trade and knowing what we know now they're back on the hunt for a wide receiver, my draft grade's going to go down to a B. All right, like if they would have gotten Elic Ayomanor there in round 4, that would have been an absolute steal in my opinion, and this might have been like an A draft class for me. Like that, not getting that wide receiver is that big of a deal to me at this point in time. Now we'll see which wide receiver the Steelers bring in on the trade market or in free agency to kind of round out the rest of this group, and maybe this grade at the end of the day will increase because of that. But right now, because of the wide receiver room that you currently have constructed, I think the new draft grade for me is a B. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. What's your updated draft grade for the Pittsburgh Steelers after the George Pickens trade and knowing that the Steelers didn't take a wide receiver? Give me an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F for today's pin question. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me your updated grade on the Steelers draft class. Then after the draft, the Steelers did sign a number of undrafted free agents. Keep your eye on Sebastian Castro, the safety/slot corner out of Iowa. I think he's got a good chance to potentially even make the final roster this year. Ben Sauls, the kicker out of Pitt. DJ Thomas Jones, the tight end/fullback prospect. That should be a lot of fun this offseason. Blake Mangelson out of BYU. He was a highly touted, really athletic defensive lineman prospect. Could be a 5 technique type of player for the Steelers defensive line. Aiden Williams, D2, Minnesota Minnesota Duluth player coming in here that I think has some really nice physical tools and could compete for a roster spot this year. Rock Taylor and Keyshawn Williams, the two wide receivers that were brought in here. Rock Taylor, kind of the bigger, kind of contested catch type of receiver, than Keyshawn Williams, the slot that got a lot of production last year at Indiana. And then J.J. Galbraith, the very athletic kind of receiving tight end from South Dakota, rounds out the UDFA group this year. And then they got a long list of minicamp tryouts. Now, we're just going to roll through these here, the graphics, because I'm not going to go through every single name, but there are a number of pretty intriguing prospects in here. You know, there's multiple Pitt Panthers that are in this group. Trey Sermon is a veteran running back that has actually started games in the National Football League that is getting an invite here, and he's going to be working alongside Kaleb Johnson in the days and weeks to come. And you know, I do think that there are some pretty intriguing names that you should be keeping your eye out here to get potential UDFA contracts or just straight up free agency contracts after rookie minicamp. And the first name to watch out for is Trey Sermon. Okay, he's 26 years old, so he's still relatively young. You know, he's got great size. He's 6 foot tall, 215 pounds. He's played in 42 NFL games throughout his career, so he's no stranger to being on an NFL roster, and he's started 5 games, including 2 just last year with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, he hasn't been super productive throughout his career. There's a reason why he's getting a rookie minicamp tryout here instead of, you know, being a bona fide player on an NFL roster at this point. But he's known as a good outside zone running back that brings good size to the table. He was extremely productive in college, and you know, he's somebody that's intriguing to me and somebody I'm going to be keeping my eye on this weekend. Then another guy I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye out here is one of my favorite kind of sleeper picks at the interior offensive line position in this entire draft class, in Thomas Perry. He can play both guard spots and center. He was one of the biggest standouts, in my opinion, along the offensive line at the Shrine Bowl this year. If you don't know what the Shrine Bowl is, it's kind of like the Senior Bowl. It's a pre-draft all-star game type of thing. It's held here in Frisco, Texas. And he was one of the more impressive, you know, interior offensive linemen in the entire group. And he was going up against legit FCS or legit FBS competition, Division I defensive tackles, and he was holding his own. And his nickname is actually Thomas the Tank because of the strength that he brings to the table. He had 31 bench press reps, even though he's a little bit undersized for an offensive guard prospect for the National Football League. His arm length is a little bit less as well, but he's going to be an interior player. That's perfectly fine. And I do like his functional athleticism as well. If you're going to be an undersized kind of center / guard, I want you to be able to move, especially in short areas, very quickly. He can do that, and he's definitely one of the guys that I'm going to be keeping my eye on to potentially get a full-time contract here with the Pittsburgh Steelers to make their 90-man roster heading into the 2025 offseason. So still to come here on Steelers Talk, there's a report saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers expect a big jump from Roman Wilson in his second season in the NFL. We'll talk about what Deshaun Elliott had to say about a top wide receiver target for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then Mike Florio shares a new Aaron Rodgers theory for why he hasn't signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers as of yet. But before we get into the rest of today's content here on Steelers Talk, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Fanatics, where you guys can pick up a brand new DK Metcalf jersey, of course, in the Steelers colors, when you go to chatsports.com/DK. Down there in the comments and description of today's show, you can find that link. You click that link, you make a purchase, and Fanatics sends us part of the proceeds. So not only do you get a new Steelers jersey with DK Metcalf's number 4 on it, but also we get a portion of the proceeds. So it really does help us out, guys. If you want to get a new DK Metcalf jersey in your closet today, all you have to do is go to chatsports.com/DK, make a purchase to help us out and help yourself out. Okay, now let's get into this report from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, where he says that the Pittsburgh Steelers expect a year 2 jump, quote unquote, from second-year wide receiver out of Michigan and last year's third-round pick, Roman Wilson. This is the exact quote that he put out on X yesterday. This offseason, he looks like a different player than his injury-riddled rookie campaign. Now, I think that is pretty obvious here, and it's pretty obvious that the Steelers would expect a year 2 jump from somebody that pretty much didn't play at all last year. Like, he barely played whatsoever. He dealt with a number of injuries, and, you know, by the time that he got back on the practice field towards the end of the season, he just wasn't really up to speed. And, as Mike Tomlin likes to say, he had a hard time getting on the moving train there towards the end of the year. But, a big question is, what can you really realistically expect from this guy heading into his second season? Now, this is my scouting report on him coming out of Michigan. I really love his acceleration. He can get to top speed extremely quickly. The foot speed is really nice. I think that his hands, very natural hands, even for a smaller receiver. He plucks that ball out of the air. He doesn't rely on body catching or anything like that. He can pluck the ball out of the air with his hands. I love his run blocking mentality. He's not that big. He's only 5'11", 185, but he definitely brings the right mentality to the pitch every single game day. And I really liked his route running at the Senior Bowl. His route tree was a little bit limited at Michigan because they honestly didn't run like that crazy of an offense there at Michigan while he was there. He was asked to run, a lot of the same routes, so he didn't really get to show off his route running kind of prowess. But I thought he showed a lot of good stuff at the Senior Bowl 2 years ago. Now, he's not the best yak threat. He's more of just a, downfield threat and vertical threat with his speed. But honestly, he doesn't have great vision, or, he's not like Calvin Austin III, for example, who is excellent after the catch. And then I think he is probably a slot-only guy because of the size that he has. And, that's okay. There's definitely a world where he can be a very, very successful slot player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, I still have hope for Roman's future. My pro comp for him coming out was Randall Cobb. And as we know about Aaron Rodgers, like Rodgers and Cobb had a beautiful relationship there with the Green Bay Packers, where Cobb was super productive as his slot receiver there in Green Bay for all those seasons. So I have a feeling that if Rodgers does sign here with Pittsburgh, Roman Wilson is going to become one of his favorite targets, especially when you're in 11 personnel here in Pittsburgh. So sound off for me down there in the comments section. What's your confidence level in Roman Wilson this season? Put it on a scale of 1 to 10 for me, 1 being no confidence at all to 10 being he's going to be awesome. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments. For me, I'm at about a 7, maybe 6 with Roman Wilson. He still has a lot to prove. We all know that. And the Steelers, as the wide receiver room is currently constructed, they are really banking on him to have a stellar second season. But I do think he has the skill set here to be a success in Pittsburgh, and it definitely sounds like the Steelers are excited for his second season in the league. Now, moving on here, Allen Lazard, a former teammate of Aaron Rodgers, both with the Green Bay Packers and with the New York Jets, has some pretty decent chemistry with Rodgers, has been linked in trade rumors to the Pittsburgh Steelers ever since the Steelers traded George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys earlier this week. But there's a Steelers player that doesn't seem too happy with that idea, Deshaun Elliott, who we all love, and he is so funny on social media. But there was a report there in a post on Instagram saying that Allen Lazard is in play to be traded to the Steelers, and he responded to it saying, "He's so ass, LOL." I mean, this is crazy stuff here from Deshaun Elliott, especially if this is an actual possibility. And if Lazard does get traded here, you can imagine that things are going to get pretty awkward here, and there's going to have to be some sort of reconciliation. Now, he might just be joking with Lazard. For all we know, they're friends, and he's just, messing with them or whatever. But, it's definitely not a vote of confidence from one of your leaders on defense right there to say that a player that you're targeting is ass, okay? Now, moving on here to another report here from Mike Florio, who speculates that Aaron Rodgers could be waiting to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers until after the NFL's schedule release. He went on Pittsburgh radio on Wednesday on Andrew Filipponi's show, actually, and he said this. From a source told him that theory that Aaron Rodgers is waiting to sign with the Steelers until after the NFL schedule release so the league doesn't load up on early Steelers primetime games is quote-unquote right on the money. Now, the schedule release for the NFL is actually next week, so make sure you click that subscribe button for extensive coverage of that. It's on May 14th, so that's next Wednesday, okay? So make sure you guys are prepared for that. But I don't think that this is the reason why Aaron Rodgers hasn't signed with the team yet, all right? I think it's a silly reason because, why would he care about primetime games? If anything, he would want to play on more primetime games, right? They could get more eyes on you. A lot of times, Players love playing on primetime games as well. Now, you don't necessarily love Thursday night games or anything like that, but, I don't think Rodgers has any problem playing on primetime football. He played a lot. He's played in primetime a lot throughout his career, so I can't imagine that he's like, oh, I'm going to not sign because I don't want to play primetime games. And by the way, the Steelers are going to get primetime games anyway because they're a blue blood franchise, and they're going to draw a large audience for that primetime game no matter who the quarterback is. So I don't really see why this would be the reasoning why Rodgers hasn't signed on yet. My theory as to why Rodgers hasn't signed, guys, is that he just doesn't want to take criticism for not showing up to the early phases of the offseason program. He just has no interest in phase 1 and phase 2 because, all that is like lifting and then like walk through practices. Like, he's a 20-year NFL veteran. He's one of the most intelligent quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League, and he might even have Arthur Smith's playbook in his possession right now, for all we know. Like, he doesn't necessarily need to be there in the first 2 phases of the offseason, and he's got a lot going on in his life right now. It appears he just got married. Also, he's been helping out a ton of his friends who lost their homes in the California wildfires last year, this offseason, and he would rather attend to those things at this point than sign on to the Steelers and then take a bunch of crap from the media for not showing up to the first couple phases of the offseason program. So when he's ready to participate, whether that's OTAs, whether that's mandatory minicamp, I think the Steelers are going to be there waiting for him. And I think the fact that Rodgers hasn't just straight up told the Steelers, I'm not interested in playing with you for you this year, probably is an indication that he's eventually going to sign on with this football team. And, another reason why he might be waiting is because he might be waiting to see who the Steelers get at wide receiver. Like, he might be waiting to see if they can get one of his guys like Alan Lazard or Romeo Dubs, or he might be waiting to see if they bring in a nice veteran like Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen. He just wants to make 100% sure he knows what he's signing up for before he signs on the dotted line. I could certainly see that being a logical reason why Rodgers has not signed on the dotted line yet. Now we'll move on to a couple final stories here before we wrap up here. There's a report here that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to play the Minnesota Vikings in Ireland this year, not the Green Bay Packers, as has been kind of assumed in the media as of late. Filippone went on Twitter this week and said, source, the Steelers will host the Vikings in Ireland on September 28th, one day after my birthday, by the way, not the Packers, contrary to popular belief. So just keep that in mind when the schedule release comes out next week. And then there's also another report out there that the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting a new alternate helmet this year. Remember last year they kind of had the old school helmet there with the gray face mask for the game against the New York Jets. This year apparently they're going to be getting a different alternate helmet, and a lot of people are speculating they could be bringing back the yellow helmets, and we all know how sick those were, man. Like, I love the yellow helmets. I don't know how you guys feel about them, but I would love to see those yellow helmets return, but I'm also open to other ideas, okay? Like, I think that there's some really fun things that you could potentially do, but personally, like, if I'm the Steelers, I'm just bringing back that yellow helmet because I think that that is a good look. But share your thoughts with me down there in the comments section. Give me your alternate helmet ideas in the comments section. Do you want to bring back the yellow one? Do you want to go with something else? Let me know your ideas down there in the comments section. And before I say goodbye today, I want to give a big shout out to the people that super thanks on a video this week here on Steelers Talk. If you don't know what a super thanks is the people that send in a little bit of a tip. You guys can send in a super thanks below this video if you feel like you've gotten some value from today's show. It's that money sign with the heart surrounding it. It's right below this video. If you guys want to send in $5 or any dollar amount, we greatly appreciate your guys' support. But shout outs this week goes to Steveman, Gail B. Palmer, Steelers Dad, Rick Tudor, Adam Backert, I hope I'm saying that right, Beach Zaga, and then Uriah Brobes. Thank you guys so much for all of your guys' support. And if you're a real one that made it to the end of today's show, thank you guys so much for making it to the end. It really does help us out here. We're going to have extensive Steelers content for you guys all throughout the weekend. And then, of course, Rookie Minicamp Winners and Losers is on Monday, so you're not going to want to miss that one. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.